Kitchen Table. I'm Judy Barlow, and I'm your host today. We're talking about issues that are important to you and your families. Today we have joining us from Alabama is Congressman Barry Moore. Welcome, Congressman.
Well, thank you, Judy. It's an honor to be on with you.
Thank you. You know, we are in the golden age of America right now. We are seeing the promises made and the promises kept by President Trump. He promised that he would issue executive orders on day one, and he is issuing them at a rapid pace. How are you in the House and the Senate, as you issue legislation, how are you adapting to this rapid fire release of all these executive orders and getting them codified into law to help our American families?
Well, yeah, that was certainly a concern for me, Judy. And one of the priorities, I told my team, when we looked up, there were 350 executive orders already issued, and we were just kind of in session trying. And I told my team, I said, let's do what we can to codify whatever President Trump's doing, because we want to make sure that when he leaves office, we don't have a repeat of 2021 when Joe Biden came in with a pen and a phone, as Barack Obama famously said, and undone so many of the things that were doing great for America, securing the border, certainly getting the wasteful spending under control. So, you know, I've got a bill I just passed out of the Judiciary Committee that I serve on. It's going to be it's a Protecting America's Communities Act from DUIs. And one of the things it does, and I got this through last session, I got it to the floor, but it allows us, if we arrest an illegal that is driving drunk in America, we can deport them. And if they have DUIs in their country they're coming from, they're not allowed entrance. And so, you know, that we've always thought, I mean, most of us assumed that as American citizens, if you catch an illegal driving drunk, then he's gone. But the law is it's not in place. And so I've got that bill in place. And so that's one of the things. And then there's a couple of other things that, you know, we're trying to, this Stop Secret Spending Act, you know, as Elon starts to identify the waste, the fraud, abuse that DOGE is uncovering, then there is and actually I've got some bipartisan support on this bill. We're actually going to say there's 150 government agencies and only 100 actually report to Congress what they're spending. Well, with the other 50, we'd like to know where that $18 billion went. And so through this process, I've got that bill introduced. So we're trying, and many other members on the Hill are trying to codify what President Trump's doing. And he's a great leader. He is moving at the speed of light. Congress does not move at the speed of light. So we, out of the 218 of us, we've got to divide the workload, but we're certainly doing our part, and I hope we can continue to codify what it is that the president's doing.
Well, and that leads us into this next question. We saw last week that Representative Elise Stefanik stepped back from her ambassadorship with the UN to stay in Congress and to help you guys out, because the margins are just still razor thin. And you guys got a mandate from the American people during the election to get some things done and to make some changes. So how do you see the Congress working together? And you also just mentioned working across the aisle with Democrats. How do you see working together and getting some of these bills passed, such as Stop the Secret Spending Act that you just talked about?
Well, I think it's kind of twofold. There are relationships that you build on the Hill with some of the Democrats, and certainly Jimmy Panetta, him and I, we traveled together and became friends. And so when the Stop Secret Spending Act came up, he didn't really want it tied to DOGE, but deep down I knew that's what it was. But we had to do it to get him on board, because the Democrats, some of the guys understand we've got to get spending under control. Not a lot of them. Most of them just want to print money and tax people. And so, but Jimmy was one of those that was willing to come on and work this legislation with me. He just didn't want me to talk about DOGE, didn't want DOGE in the title. I understood that. So there are things we can do that allow members sometimes across the aisle, but we've got to stay together as a group, as a conference, as Republicans. And Elise is another member. She's been in leadership and didn't want those margins, to get so tight that we couldn't move our agenda and the president's, more importantly, his agenda, his mandate across the finish line. And so if Elise left and we lost a seat in Florida or somewhere, you know, because you got a couple folks that have been moved around and brought on board by the administration, then I think what Elise is doing is just allowing us to kind of keep that majority and not go to the administration. Because if in fact, and we all know this to be true, and I'm, like I said, I was on Judiciary, still am. I mean, they were already drafting articles of impeachment if the House went to the Democrats in the majority. So if Trump had won, like he did, and then the Democrats would have won the House, they would have started articles of impeachment. We'd have relived 2016, 2017 all over again. And they would have tied the president's hands on moving his agenda. So for at least to step back from that ambassador job and say, hey, or UN secretary job and say, hey, I'm going to come over, stay with the Republicans and keep the majority. I think that was the right call.
Well, it's important for us to stay together, as you just mentioned, because we're already looking, I mean, we just finished this election, but we're already looking forward to the midterms. And I know you guys are working at just a rapid pace to get as much legislation pushed through as you can, because we need to be ready to answer to the people for the midterms.
Yeah, and I'm encouraged, Judy. I'm really encouraged by the polling numbers we're seeing, the approval rate for Donald Trump. And certainly the Democrats they don't have an agenda. All they got is that we have Trump. I mean, everything they're doing is anti-DOGE. And actually, people may not realize it, but I think in some ways, Elon Musk kind of reminds me of a fullback on a football team. He's going through the hole, and President Trump's able to run his halfback. So to me, Elon's taking a lot of the brunt of the hits. He's taking a lot of the beating. So he's doing a service, even if he wasn't finding the waste, fraud, and abuse, which he is. And he's doing great things for the American taxpayer and the future of this country. But in some ways, too, even the hits that he has taken personally, and Tesla's getting attacked, obviously, but that allows Donald Trump to run his play, and Trump is running his fullback. And so it takes some of the pressure. I think Trump is kind of behind Elon. He's getting all the media attention. Trump's just doing his job. And so it's actually a win-win for the American people. I know it's tough on Elon. I appreciate him doing it. But the way that we're moving the ball, I think that the poll numbers show that the people are pleased, and we certainly got a midterm coming up, and we've got to hold the House.
I agree with you, and those are all really good points. I think I don't know that anybody expected Elon to step forward with DOGE, you know, and it be this impactful, but it is. And I think the American people are still behind him, but we're hearing a lot still from the media and others that are discounting DOGE and what they're trying to do, and Elon and what they're trying to do, and you guys with this bill. So thoughts to our women on that, on, you know, as you're watching the daily news and you see all these attacks and all of these discredits, I mean, what is your message?
So my message is, don't believe the media. We know they're dishonest. They're across the board dishonest. NPR, we're finding out now, you know, they're 90% Democrat, and we're funding it with federal dollars. It's just an arm of the Democratic Party. And so all of these things, you just cannot believe the media, because as we pull the veil back, there's an old saying, if you throw a rock into the pig pen, the one that squeals the loudest is the one that got hit. Well, I think the reason the Democrats and the media are squealing is because they feel the pressure of what's about to happen. And we want to find out. I want to know the Epstein list. I want to see who was on the planes. I want to find out for sure how these folks working in Washington, D.C. became multimillionaires over a period of a decade or 2 decades on the salary they make here, living here, carrying 2 households. We want answers to that. And the answer, I think, Elon is close to finding. And he's even said, there's concerns about his own safety, because as he pulls this system back and we unveil what's been going on and the way the American people have been defrauded by people here illegally, people within the system, people who are just willing to take your tax money and distribute it to their friends and colleagues, and then want to raise your taxes. To me, they're going to be squealing loud, whether it's the media, the Democrats, even the rhinos in Washington, D.C., that really don't want you to know what's going on with your money in your country. And so you just have to be willing to let them squeal. You have to be willing. There is an old saying, if you tell people a lie, it's for their good. For your good. If you tell them the truth, it's for your good. And I think us being clear and transparent, that's for the American people's good. They could lie, and then the things that for years past, you guys, and I know, honestly, I believe if Donald Trump hadn't won, if Hillary Clinton had won in 2016, I don't think we'd have had any idea how big a mess we were in. But by doing that, and then Trump accused them, the Russian collusion, of coming after him. He accused the media of being fake news. And the American people were still like, that's kind of a bold statement. But in hindsight, the man's been right. What he's uncovered and what he said was going on during the Russian collusion, during all that stuff, just one issue after another, them raiding his home, all these things that they've done to him and to conservatives in this country, those conspiracies have become truth.
That is true. And you mentioned the spending, and we're now, last year when I did an interview, we were $35 trillion in debt, and now we're $36 trillion in debt. So, as we uncover the waste and the fraud and the abuse in the spending, and we look at your Stop the Secret Spending Act, which goes back and looks at those OTAs or those other transactional agreements that federal agencies get involved in. As business people, you're a businessman. I worked for FedEx for many years in corporate marketing, and I had $1 million budget that I was responsible for. I would never have gotten by without publicizing what I was spending or what I was using the monies for. And I feel like neither should our federal agencies be able to get by with that.
It's absolutely, transparency ought to be the number one thing. And I think that that's what we're finding with the FBI, we're finding with DOGE. And Reagan tried a DOGE. He tried his own form of DOGE when he got elected in the 80s. And he sent his team to all these bureaucratic headquarters around Washington, D.C. And the career bureaucrats were able to just shuffle papers. And they were able to kind of, they smoke screened Reagan's people. And Reagan couldn't get to the bottom of a lot of what was going on. But they can't smoke screen Elon. These guys, our team DOGE is so much smarter than the bureaucrats. They can't firewall them on the systems. Our algorithms are steadily uncovering fraud. When you talk about 3.5 million people between the age of 150 and 159 drawing Social Security, I don't see a lot of 155-year-olds around town. And so we just know from that one section of the demographic, 3.5 million fraudsters. And then as we begin to uncover these things, that money's going to somebody. And I think in some ways the cartel has actually gotten access to our systems. And so, sure, they're going to squeak and they're going to, like you said, they're going to raise sand with Elon and President Trump. But the American people sent a mandate. And I think that we need to deliver on that mandate. But I told Mark Harris, he's a new elected member, freshman from North Carolina. We were sitting on the floor the other night. And I said, Mark, you're witnessing history. This term is going to be historic. The things Reagan tried to do, the things we've talked about, things Democrats have talked about, for years, we got to get a handle on waste, fraud, and abuse. Well, by golly, every time they never question Elon's numbers. They question his motives, but they never question his numbers. His numbers are right. His motives are, I believe he wants to save the country. And I believe that President Trump wants to save the country. You got a couple of billionaires that could ride off in the sunset in their jets and not worry anymore about this country and let it burn to the ground. But Trump's got kids and grandkids. Elon's got kids. And I think in many ways, they are the patriots of our time. So when Mark Harris and I are sitting on the floor going, man, you're witnessing history. Yes, we're witnessing history. And it's an opportunity for us to save this nation through the grace of God. I think he gave us another pass this time by putting Trump and Elon in there, or another directive, I should say. I don't think it was a pass. I think it's a directive. We need to accomplish the mission. And so, sure, there's fear mongering, but that's the media. The only thing the Democrats had, and we talked this earlier, they don't really have an agenda. They don't have a message. They run on fear. That emotion of fear. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? Well, you know what? Good things are happening, and the American people are seeing it.
That's right. And let's talk about the border for a minute, because the top two issues for the women and our families was the economy and our wide open border and the massive amount of illegal immigrants that were just pouring in. And when we talk about being trillions of dollars in debt and we spend money on illegal immigrants coming into our country, I mean, that's just crazy. So you talked about your DUI bill that you introduced last year, and we know everything just went over to the Senate and sat in the graveyard under Schumer. So what do you see different about that bill this year and us getting that passed to help our law enforcement?
Well, I think we got a great opportunity. We passed it already, like I said, out of committee and judiciary. We're moving pretty quick on some of the things. I think the thing that helps us now is we have the White House, and President Trump can pull on the Senate a little bit and say, y'all need to move some of these items that sat kind of stagnant over in the Senate, like you said last year under Schumer and Biden. But now we have Thune and Trump. And I think that you'll see some of our legislation trying to codify what President Trump wants done. Hopefully we'll make it into law and get them signed by the president. And I'll probably attend those signings if he signs them. So I think it's a little different dynamic, really. We just had one body. Now we've got all three. And I think there's an opportunity for us to deliver for the American people, and hopefully we will.
And I agree with you on that. What about the funding for rebuilding or adding on to the wall? The funding and just the building of the wall. There's several bills in the House right now talking about both of those. How do you see those progressing?
Yeah, so I think what we're finding is we're going to be able to progress. A couple of things, like I said, President Trump ran on the economy and certainly securing the country. The one benefit that DOGE is, Elon thinks he can save us $1 trillion this year. And that's finding the fraud, like I said, Social Security, USAID. I voted to defund USAID last year, half of their total monies. And then Elon came in and we saw that money going to these foreign countries. I'm like, wait a minute, what on earth? And he kind of pulled the veil back. We saw what the money was being wasted. And these NGOs that are helping escort people across the South America into America, all of these agencies are being funded by the taxpayers. We were funding our own invasion. And so I think now that Elon's able to save some money, we can certainly go back to $1 trillion. We can go back to funding a wall for a few $1 billion. And I think that's where we're at. We're finding savings. And President Trump asked, that we did away with the tax on tips, and we're looking for doing away with the tax on Social Security down the road as well. But he also wanted to make sure that we had the money to fund the wall. And Tom Homan and DHS, Department of Homeland, he's trying to make sure he's got the resources to round people up. So it's a balancing act, but I think you'll see the wall. And I think this program that they've got, I think probably one of the most effective tools for the invasion we had, they call it immigration, but it was an invasion in the last 4 years, was this app on the phone that it was like a fast pass. It was like a fast pass that Biden put in that Mayorkas, she could just hit a button and, we'll send you a court date, right? So we gave them a phone, we gave them $800 a month, and we sent them a court date for 10 years down the road, which they never took our calls when it was time for their court dates. But this phone now, it beeps and goes, hey, if you deport yourself, you'll be eligible for legal reentry. And so I think we're seeing a lot of people self-deport. And I think because they know down the road, if there's any opportunity to ever be a real U.S. citizen, they need to do it the right way and they need to follow the rules. So in some ways, what I thought was a horrible thing was the Disney Fast Pass to America may end up being a tool for us a lot of those people be deported on their own dime. I think we'll pay for the flights, obviously. But so, there's an opportunity. I think the funding between the savings and DOGE and I think the economy, Trump and Elon both think we're going to have pretty good GDP over the next couple of years. That'll give us some resources that raises tax revenue. So you'll see a wall, you'll see some deportations, and I think you see some tax breaks as well if we manage this right.
Well, and you mentioned tax breaks, and I didn't really have that on the agenda to talk about today, but we have been watching tax relief acts, last year and watching what's happening with the budget this year and getting some tax relief for Americans. So we hope that does come to pass and that we can get some tax relief for our American families.
Yeah, Judy, we don't really have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem. And I think that's the issue in DC. You hear that all the time. We spend like drunk sailors, and that's an insult to drunk sailors. What we do is ridiculous. Sending money to foreign countries and people who never paid into the system, whether it be through a false Social Security number or a USAID form, an NGO, all these things we're doing that we're funding that are not a benefit to the American people, they need to be stopped, and we need to leave that money in the American people's pockets to reinvest in their families, their businesses, whatever the case may be.
Well, and by doing that, we help America grow and be safe, strong, and wealthy again. So any last minute words that you'd like to leave our women going forward?
Yeah, ladies, I believe in prayer. So y'all keep our nation in your prayer. I think that there is a God and we're not him, but I'm grateful for this opportunity. And we cherish your prayers as leaders. We're not perfect people, but we certainly would appreciate all the prayers. Pray for your president, pray for this nation. And with that, Judy, that's about all I need to say, I guess, is keep us in your prayers.
Well, thank you, Congressman, and thank you for joining us today to give us updates on the border and the economy. And we look forward to hearing back from you soon.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. God bless you.